So today I wanted to take a chance to talk about the subject of, does it matter what roof manufacturer you choose? Now, this will vary a lot, so first I'm going to go over residential and commercial. And to those who saw my previous video on this, I do want to apologize. I am getting a lot of reports of audio issues. For whatever reason, when I review it on my end, it looks just fine, but I am consistently being told that around the 7-minute mark that it just completely cut off. And once I find, and the strangest thing, I log into a different YouTube account, into my personal account, and I can't get the audio to work past 2 minutes. But whenever I'm watching it from my little YouTube Studio app, or watching it from my YouTube app on my phone, I have no problems. I'm not sure what the cause is. So today I'm revisiting this subject, and I'm actually going to expand on it today for those of you who did get to see the original video from when it was still working. I'm also going to touch a little bit on commercial manufacturers and commercial roof types. So to start with, does it matter what manufacturer you choose when it comes to residential roofs, specifically asphalt shingles? So as far as asphalt shingles go, you have a wide variety of manufacturers, especially in the United States. And for the most part, they offer between 30 to 50 year warranties and then a lifetime warranty. And the problem with this is, and they're fully aware of this, is that the majority of shingles will never make it to that 30-year mark. Usually from a combination of hail, wind, frankly, poor installation, and mechanical damages from people like solar installers, HVAC maintenance techs. And so they know that it's not meant to live past that 30 years. Even more so, they also are fully aware that on those 30-year warranties, that the majority of time you're not going to see the defects, and by the time you notice them, they will have something else they can blame. Now, there's 1,000 ways to get out of this. They can say that, well, there was improper ventilation, but there might be proper ventilation there. They just know that you won't be able to prove it. They can say, oh, well, there's been so many hailstorms in your area. If you live in a place like Colorado, your warranties mean almost nothing, because take, for example, 2023, we had over 100 hailstorms in Colorado that year. It is impossible that you live anywhere in the state of Colorado and you did not receive at least one hailstorm. Now, that might have been a minor pea-sized hailstorm, but that can be enough for some manufacturers to make that claim, because they know that generally you're not going to pursue legal action against them for their faulty products. And so you get a lot of manufacturers that are like this. Now, there might be some significant blistering, and I do want to say in advance, I am going to touch on a couple individual manufacturers specifically for asphalt shingles that I intend on touching on today. And for the most part, it is not going to matter whether you buy Certainty, Atlas, IKO, Owens Corning, Gaff, because all of these brands know that they're going to fail about the same time to the same size hail. And again, even if hail doesn't get to them, wind gets to them, and it doesn't matter how well you install your shingle. Yes, there are 100-mile-per-hour shingles, there are 130-mile-per-hour shingles, there are 150-mile-per-hour shingles. It doesn't matter, because even if your shingle was windproof, even if you had a shingle that was rated for 400-mile-per-hour wind, it's not the shingle that you then have to worry about. It's the deck underneath. It's the flying carport that you installed in your front yard. It's your neighbor's trampoline. I literally have seen a trampoline get embedded in through the wall of a building that was a neighbor's trampoline. The house would have fared just fine otherwise, but their neighbor had a trampoline that wasn't mounted down into the ground properly. And I say that in a high wind zone. I mean, normally you can just leave a trampoline freestanding. A lot of times with those heavy winds, you get tree branches. And even with heavy snows, you get tree branches that fall. And this is especially true in areas that don't get heavy winds. Because you'll notice in certain areas, like especially like eastern Oregon, for example, you have these trees that are growing 60 to 100 feet tall, and they start toppling over to 60-mile-per-hour wind because they have shallow roots. Now, if you go into Colorado, you're not going to get that because these have deep roots. They're spread out everywhere. They're so used to it. Usually it's because the tree branch gets too heavy due to snow, or it's already weakened and the wind takes it down. But the other side of that is that you do get these 100-mile-per-hour gusts in those areas. And 60 mile per hour is just common for them. And so that's why it doesn't really matter what warranty you go with, because 9 times out of 10, there's going to be an outside factor that destroys your roof beforehand. And so there are some exceptions, but most shingles compare to each other. Now, the one that I want to start with is Owens Corning. Now, Owens Corning, Sure nail strips. So Owens Corning has this nailing strip. It's a bit reinforced, and then when it seals down to it from the underside of the shingle, it actually seals really well. It's one of the most windproof shingles that I deal with on a normal basis. But on top of those outside factors, because they have such a strong bond at the end there, they don't move with expansion and contraction as well. They have natural cracking that occurs worse than the majority of brands. And this cracking can eventually get so bad that it allows water in that gets trapped inside that shingle and eventually leaks down inside. It causes a complete system failure. And is that saying that Owens Corning is worse? No, because usually by the time the shingle's aged to the point where that's going to be a problem, hail's already taken out the roof a couple times where an insurance claim should have bought it, or there's been some severe wind involved. And so I apologize, the sun is getting agitating to me, so I'm going to see if I can't get it to stop adjusting the brightness. Next up, I want to talk about Malarkey. Now, Malarkey, on the other hand, is one of the few brands that I will say does have a difference when it comes to shingles. Even if you get a class 3 or class 4 shingle, it only makes a minor impactful difference, depending on where you live. So that class 4 shingle holds up to 2-inch hail a little bit better, whereas class 3 is for 1 3/4 inch hail. And unfortunately, that's when it's manufactured. As it ages, it becomes more and more susceptible to hail. So even if you got a class 4 shingle 10 years ago, now that 10 years have passed, odds are pretty high that that shingle is now weak enough to the point where it can still be damaged by that smaller hail. And so Malarkey kind of comes off as a completely different case, because I have seen a lot of Malarkey roofs where I will get up on a roof and I will be able to see every neighbor to the right, every neighbor to the left, across the street and behind them has hail damage, visible from the ground sometimes depending on the color of the roof. And I'll walk up on this class 4 Malarkey like a Windsor or a Legacy even, and I won't see any hail damage to the main field area of the roof. Now, I'll have box vents, I will have turbine vents, I will even have pipe boots that are dented or sometimes even holes in them for mostly the aluminum caps. And I have seen a Malarkey survive a 3-inch hail before. But I will say this, the hip and ridge did not survive it, but the field area did. And so Malarkey is one of the few brands I can actually say I have noticed a definite difference in how they handle hail versus others. I see a lot of Owens Corning, I see a lot of Gaff, I see a lot of Certainty and IKO and other brands, and I don't quite see them handle the hail. Even with their best products, I don't see them handle the hail as some of the just above average Malarkey. Now, I will say that warranty departments are different from one to another. Now, Certainty is a great example of this. So Certainty probably has one of the worst warranty departments I have ever dealt with in my life. And to the point where it's so bad that there are records of thousands of lawsuits involved. Class action lawsuits and product failure where the shingle will just start to... You've got the bleeding shingle failure, which is a incident that occurred years ago, mostly from shingles installed in the early 2000s, where the sealing strips of the shingles would actually start to bleed out tar, completely visible from the ground. And you call that in for warranty and they'd say, oh, well, clearly the installer installed some sort of sealant in it, or clearly they didn't ventilate properly, or this and this. And they've lost lawsuits for it. There's class action lawsuits, there's settlements that's been paid out. And even to this day, when turning in warranty claims with Certainty over things that they have lost lawsuits about, even attempting to turn those in to collect on the lawsuit, CertainTeed will try to fight you a lot. Now, I'm not going to say every time and every person there, but I have had more headaches with CertainTeed than any other brand on average. I've even had CertainTeed hang up on me when trying to when trying to discuss the warranty process. And I don't mean like when I'm getting hostile. I mean when I'm just discussing, hey, I've got this issue, you know, who would you like me to email it, or can I get somebody out here and they'll hang up because they don't want to talk about it. I've had experiences with almost every brand out there at some point, whether I was on the installer side of things, whether I was helping as a third-party consultant. I've had to deal with the vast majority of shingle manufacturers in the United States. And most of them, I would say on average, 80-90% of the time, they treat you right. They treat you fairly. Maybe 30% of the time, CertainTeed is non-hostile to me, is the best way I would put it. Especially when you're talking a full roof replacement of typically larger properties. And so that kind of touches on shingle manufacturers. Now, moving over to commercial side of things, it starts to change a bit once you start talking about the difference between Carlisle versus Firestone versus Duralast. And then there's IB. There's a ton of different manufacturers, especially in the US, of TPO, EPDM, and PVC. Now, when it comes to these single-ply manufacturers, I will say that the process is a bit different. Most of the time, they're going to want to send out a representative to talk about it. They know that it's not going to be a small-scale project. Now, and part of this, I feel, is twofold. A, because when it comes to commercial products, they know that their reputation is essential. And B, when it comes to commercial products, unlike residential shingles, you're probably not going to get a lawyer and want to sue the manufacturer over a $8,000 to $10,000 roof. Take that same roof, make it commercial. Now you're talking $20,000 plus. Suddenly it's lawsuit worthy. Suddenly it's worth hiring the lawyer. And I have been through great and horrible experience with a lot of them. The vast majority of the time it's good. Now, it does matter what brand you use when it comes to commercial products a lot of the time. A lot of these products are built to withstand the hail, they're built to withstand the wind, and they're manufactured in such a way that their failures are usually related to the installation, a third party damaging it, like, you know, your HVAC guy goes on the roof, he drags his panels across, causes big slices. Natural failure is rare with these roofs. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. But I'm saying there's a lot of ways to prevent it from happening. So if you have a PVC roof, the PVC roof, the most likely failure of PVC is due to hail or third-party damage. If you install gypsum or concrete directly underneath it, the odds of that happening significantly lower, especially if you get a nice, thick, and I apologize, my brain didn't want to work there for a second. If you get a nice, thick 3/8 inch gypsum or better, the odds of you getting hurt by hail in the majority of the roof are very small. TPO roofs do have their natural failure. They do start to naturally decay. Their main problem is with heat-related issues, as well as chemical contamination. And then EPDM's most likely failure is wind, as well as lack of maintenance. And so these manufacturers, they know this is important. They might release certain obligations with your warranty on things that you have to fix. And so because they know that, especially commercial buildings, you might have a $1 million server that the slightest leak can impact. And the slightest manufacturing related issue can impact. They're much more serious about their manufacturing warranties. In addition to that, with residential applications, you usually see only a manufacturing warranty that basically says, well, if we think in the next 30 years you can't prove that we manufactured it wrong. On the commercial side, you get what starts with material-only warranties, which basically say, hey, we'll fix anything wrong with our material for that period of time. But then you get labor and material. And these not only certify that they will pay for anything material related, but a lot of times they say that if your installer installed it wrong, we will pay the cost to repair that. You may have to pay like a small trip fee, and you have to worry about your own contents to the building that you have to pay for, or you can sue the roofer for it. But they will pay for any failures related to the installation. Then you get no dollar limit warranties, NDLs, and NDL warranties tend to not only pay for the trip fees, they pay for any fees related to the time used to assess it. They'll pay for the whole kit and caboodle there. And lastly, you've got consequential warranties. And I only know a few manufacturers that even offer this, and usually the standard for them is very high. They have to have a manufacturing rep fully inspect the roof before they'll issue these. But there are consequential warranties, and there's a few different names for these, where say you have a roof that's put on wrong, it leaks inside and it damages this $150,000 server. Not only do they pay for somebody to go out and look at it, they pay for the materials, they pay for the person to repair it, they pay for the contents that were damaged by it. And that's what the consequential warranties are for. And so now I want to be clear about consequential. So if the roof leaks and it leaks, it leaks through the ceiling tile, it leaks onto the equipment, that's consequential. There are a lot of times where people will think, oh, I know what to do. Now that I know that there's a problem, I'll do nothing at all to stop it. And they're aware of the problem. They intentionally let it continue rather than even putting down a bucket or a tarp. They make no effort to limit the damages. Or, and I've actually caught this on camera before, they'll instead start moving expensive equipment that they no longer use under it in hopes that it gets damaged enough that they can get paid to replace it, knowing that they have no intent to replace it. Think about buyer's remorse meets insurance fraud. Isn't it lovely, folks? And so these warranties do matter a lot from one manufacturer to another, because some manufacturers won't offer consequential damages. Some manufacturers will inspect the moment you get a labor and material warranty. So now you have a manufacturer's rep going out, and this means a lot. Other manufacturers don't inspect until you start getting into the NDL or above warranties. And then how they treat it is completely different. So one company I want to touch on commercial side I brought up earlier. I am wearing their jacket today. I am not sponsored by them, nor do I work for them. I don't even install or recommend them very often anymore. I just, if I'm being honest, I got this jacket back in 2000. Oh, wow. I can't believe I don't remember it because it was my wedding anniversary. I got this jacket back in 2013, which was a big year for me and my wife. And we each got our own jacket. I think I have hers in here too, actually. I don't wear this to support them so much as I wear this because it's an insanely comfy jacket. So I just wanted to clear that up. I'm not promoting Duralast in any way, shape, or form. I'm just trying to be an honest overview of certain manufacturers that are outliers compared to others. And so Duralast, their warranty department, I have seen them go above and beyond. I have seen them pay out $500,000 on a consequential warranty that they probably could have pushed away from. I have seen them genuinely own up to their mistakes. But even though I say that, I will say that they do have their manufacturing issues. I have seen, as opposed to other brands where I'm more used to it being the installer's fault, I have seen a lot of times where Duralast has had to go out and make a repair because of a defect that came from their plants. I'm not saying their product's bad, but I'm saying it's worth double checking a little bit more than certain other brands. Another brand I'll touch on that's really popular on commercial membranes is GAF, G-A-F. And I will say that I haven't had too many issues with GAF before. And when I have issues, they are usually pretty good. However, the worst warranty experience of my life involved the GAF roof. And again, on average, they're really nice. It all depends on who you end up getting. But we had one where the membrane was literally starting to split on the TPO. TPO is made up of 3 portions: a bottom layer, a scrim, and a top layer. And it was splitting between the scrim and the top layer. Clearly a manufacturing defect. We had just finished installing, I want to say it was probably close to about a 600 square project. And we were getting this failure on multiple seams across the roof. To the point where we were probably going to have to strip every seam in on the roof. And if you've ever had to strip in every seam on a large roof, you are talking days. You are talking a full crew with walking welders. You are talking thousands, tens of thousands of dollars in labor. And the client is extremely pissed off. He's seen the issue. His inspector showed up. He called it out. And his inspector even identified, hey, this is clearly a manufacturing issue, but it needs to be addressed now. And yeah, it's very important you address that early, because if you don't, water gets between those layers and makes it substantially worse. Sometimes to the point where you have to cut out the old membrane in order to prevent it from spreading. You don't want to leave a bad apple inside the store next to all these good apples. And that's exactly what was going to happen. And so manufacturer's rep comes out and he says, well, clearly it's because they burned the seams. Excuse me? No, there's no burnt seam out there. And we even had leftover scrap membrane that we were able to pull out, and it was happening on that. So how does it happen to scrap that's never been welded? And so the initial experience with them was they tried to throw us under the bus. And now if they throw us under the bus and it's not a manufacturing defect, we might have been talking a full re-roof. We might have been talking literally 6 digits lost. And despite that, everybody else that looked at it, even when they sent out another contractor for a second opinion, everybody agreed. This was clearly their fault. And they sent out one of their spokespeople, one of their salesmen, after that to kind of walk with us and try to appease the client and make us happy. And then she tried to throw us under the bus too. She tried to make the same kind of claims. And again, you're talking about that kind of lawsuit would have put the company that I was with out of business over it. Why? Because Gaff didn't want to own up to it. They doubled down on it using a salesman that, quite frankly, had no business. She had no business on that roof whatsoever. She clearly had no idea what she was doing up there or what she was looking at up there. We ended up having to not only get another consultant involved, we also got an engineer involved. And when basically everybody agreed that, hey, this is big enough to go to court, and by the way, you just pissed off one of the largest car dealerships out there because they know it's your fault. Suddenly, Gaff backed down. But it wasn't until that point that they backed down and agreed to pay what was right to fix it. And this happens in the commercial world all the time. Firestone is a perfect example of this, another major manufacturer, especially with their EPDM and TPO products. Firestone has had decades of just this constant, well, that's not a warranty item. Oh, the manufacturer didn't do that. That's oh, I know what that is. That's poor installation. Or I know what that is. That's an HVAC guy. And sometimes it is. But say you go out on a roof, and I've seen this with Firestone, I have seen this with Carlisle, I've seen this, actually, I come to think of it, I've seen this with nearly every TPO manufacturer. The majority of manufacturers do this, and it's crooked. That's why I kind of recommend having your own roofer up there that you can trust, or, maybe a camera on your roof to watch what they're doing. But they'll go up there and they will see a seam that is done wrong. They know that seam's leaking, but it's the seam on a flashing of an HVAC equipment that has exposed duct that is a little bit older. And so what they will do is they will patch or seal that ductwork, take tons of photos before and after, and blame that. Then, while they're up there, they will fix that seam as well as anything else anywhere nearby that could be related to the roof, then bill you that trip charge for that ductwork, even though they knew it was their product that failed. And yes, essentially you're paying for the ductwork repair of what it would cost to get it repaired anyway, and at the same time your roof is getting repaired. So there is a little bit of value to it, and if there's no consequential damages, you actually still make a small profit off of it, but that lack of dependability, that lack of honesty is still there, and it's something that you can't avoid. And while I will say I've seen almost every manufacturer practice this at one time, sometimes it's the individual, sometimes it's management, and I've seen it with so many Firestone reps that I have to assume that with Firestone it has to be their management that was pushing this. And unfortunately, when dealing with their warranty department for large-scale warranty repairs, I have regularly seen them take this route, even when it should be a large repair that should be worth, again, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of work. They will do their best to avoid it. Again, the flip side of that is Duralast I've seen pay more than they should willingly. IB, in fact, I want to touch on IB. Now, I do want to present that this is IB before their big management shift. Now, most of their management, to my knowledge, moved over to Phoenix Products, so this might be more applicable to them than IB at this time. I was on a roof that IB was paying for the entire roof to be redone. And the reason they were paying for it to be redone is it was from +1. It was starting to have just a couple failures here and there, but it was clearly failures in the installer. Now, it could have been repaired. It could have easily been repaired for a couple $100. And instead, they invested, it was probably $40,000, $50,000 in getting a roof redone that did not need to be redone in order to give peace of mind to the customer. And it, in a lot of ways, yes. Was it promotional to them? Did it probably lock that customer in for life? Yes. It also kind of locked me in for a little bit there. I don't think I've ever seen a single issue with an IB warranty where they've denied it. I have never seen them try to blame the HVAC. Unless it genuinely was the HVAC. I've never seen them fix something and then claim it was something else. I've always dealt with a very thorough process, a very honest process. I don't think I've ever seen more integrity than I have from them. And, you get your individual guys at other companies that are great, but I don't think I've ever had a bad one with IB over the years. The only exception with IB, I will say, is right after a lot of their people broke off and went their own way, there was one person that was just kind of an interim employee, I think, that was kind of handling inspections at the time. And he couldn't figure out what a roofing product was if the label was on it. I do apologize for that going off. I have a very angry person that's blowing up my phone. And ridiculous reasons. Going back to a warranty claim, actually. This is actually a great way to tangent off to another manufacturer. And so this goes on Carlisle and Versico. And so this was a TPO roof. Now, TPO has always had weaknesses against excessive heat. And so in an area of ponding water, there's an excessive heat buildup on this roof. It has a tall north parapet wall, so it's reflecting a lot of sun back down on the roof. It's got ponding water. It's got dirt inside that ponding water. And so when you have ponding water, it not only magnifies the sun, but if there's enough of a pond that lasts long enough, it starts to get dirt at the base of it, which colors it darker, which makes it heat up even more. Now, as TPO heats up, depending on your manufacturer, once it hits about 160 degrees, it starts to rapidly degrade. And so this roof has holes in it where there's only scrim left. If you've searched through my shorts, you'll actually find a a TPO error where I laminated a piece of similar roof. And so the roof is literally disintegrating due to the massive amounts of heat. And Carlisle has turned around and said, well, clearly that's chemical contamination from an HVAC guy's cleaner. There is no HVAC nearby that would drain into this pond. And the owner has basically said they have never had their HVAC cleaned in the over 10 years that roof has been there, which does say something about them, but that's another conversation. And so, yet again, manufacturer dodges it, tries to throw everyone else under the bus, and now everybody's mad at everybody until basically it boils down to, you have to apologize to the owner of the building, the property owner, and basically tell them, at this point, you have two choices. You can either get a lawyer or walk away. It's about $800 worth of repairs. So do you want to spend $800 to fix it, or do you want to spend probably close to 10 grand to sue them? But you sue them, you're going to get an entirely new roof. They're going to probably get those legal fees back, and then some. Is it worth it long term? Yes, but in the meantime, you do have to repair it. You know, we can't always guarantee a slam dunk. Some manufacturers do, some manufacturers don't. When it comes to this issue was one that was extremely prevalent prior to 2009. Now it still happens nowadays. But from 2003 to 2009, there was a drastic change in TPO. Prior to that, this was a common issue you saw all the time. And so other commercial roofing manufacturers include Johns Manville, and it's had its ups and downs. I've had great experiences. I've had horrible experiences. But overall, I don't have a lot of experiences that stand out with most other manufacturers. That's why I tried to give, here's for residential, here's for commercial, just to give you an idea. It doesn't matter on a lot of shingle applications when you're not talking about labor and material and you're only talking about a material only warranty. It doesn't really matter what manufacturers you go with in the end. But when you start talking about labor warranties, NDL warranties, and consequential warranties, that's when it starts mattering. So if you're just installing on your home, or if you're just getting a small shingle roof done, it's really not worth it getting into this whole brand competition. Again, some of them are slightly better against wind, some of them are slightly better against hail, some of them are slightly better against thermal expansion and contraction, some of them should probably never be installed ever. And actually, I want to touch on that last. I do apologize, I forgot to bring this up during the shingle section. So there is one manufacturer that stands out as absolutely the worst, and that would be Tamco. And so there is a lot of times where you go up on a Tamco roof that is 2-3 years old, and it will look like it's 20-30 years old, or it'll look completely hailed out when there hasn't been any hail. Tamco is well known for their manufacturing defects, to the point where their name has nearly become synonymous with defects. It's actually to the point where you will hear the joke in the insurance industry and amongst roofers that they'll go up on a roof. Oh, it was I'm not really scared of most roofs. I can walk a 10-12, which is a steep roof, and be just fine. But then I get up on a 6-12 Tamco, and it's because that surface is so soft that the granules just come out from under your feet. Sometimes the shingles will just split in half because it lost the granules early on, the emulsifier didn't hold up, and now it's starting to disintegrate the shingle. A lot of insurance companies even make jokes about, hey, it's not hail, it's Tamco, amongst each other. You don't really want to put this on the homeowner. You don't want to make them feel bad. Now, the good news is that it is very, very rare now that you meet a legitimate roofer that installs Tamco as their preference for a re-roof. I want to specify re-roof, because the most common new construction shingle out there is Tamco. It is considered builder grade quality, which is to say garbage, and because it used to be cheaper and widely available, general contractors would use it on every job. They save 5 to 10% on money, and then it gets the roof by just long enough, usually 3 to 10 years, that you can't sue them for the poor quality of material that they used or the poor workmanship involved in. The idea is to get it last just long enough that they can say it's not their fault, not their problem. And when you have to get a new roof, well. So Tamco is one of the brands I would avoid. Usually I don't get into the battle of brands. If somebody asks me to recommend a roof to them, I'll show them, hey, here's the plus, and here's the pros, here's the cons of each brand. Generally speaking, it's more about the contractor that's installing it than it is about the brand. And so it's more about finding a great contractor and then letting them pick the brand. But that said, any contractor that recommends using Tamco, that's their main product, that is a major red flag. And on top of that, on top of all these issues, on top of the constant string of lawsuits and warranty claims, Tamco will still go out of their way to act like, well, our product's gotten better. I know we had some problems in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and the beginning of 2020, but the problems have been resolved now. No. To this day, I am still up on new roofs. Those who watch my videos regularly will see a lot of times where I'm on a roof that looks in poor quality that's less than 3 years old. And those are newly manufactured homes. 9 times out of 10, they have Tamco on them. And when they have issues where it's not Tamco, and it's a brand new structure that's less than 5 years old, it's usually something having to do with the installation, third-party damages. But with Tamco, it's just Tamco. And so that's touching on, do those 30-year warranties really matter? Does it matter what brand you use?